Thank you, Adam. Well, the conclusions from Alex Allen are out, and so is the Prime Minister's verdict. I'll start with the advice that's just been published from Sir Alex Allen, the senior civil servant, looking into Priti Patel's behaviour. He says, my advice is that the Home Secretary has not consistently met the high standards required by the ministerial code of treating her civil servants with consideration and respect. Her approach on occasions has amounted to behaviour that can be described as bullying in terms of the impact felt by individuals. A heavily caveated statement there, you see. To that extent, her behaviour has been in breach of the ministerial code, even if unintentionally. This conclusion needs to be seen in a context. There is no evidence that she was aware of the impact of her behaviour, and no feedback was given to her at the time. This high pressure and the high pressure and demands of the role in the Home Office, coupled with the need for a more supportive leadership from the top of the department, has clearly been a contributory factor. In particular, I note the finding of different and more positive behaviour since these issues were raised with her. Now, the Prime Minister has had those conclusions on his desk for a while. Here's what he says. This is Boris Johnson today. The Prime Minister notes Sir Alex's advice that there are many of the concerns were not raised at the time and that the Home Secretary was unaware of the impact that her behaviour had. The Prime Minister is reassured that the Home Secretary is sorry for inadvertently upsetting those with whom she was working. He is also reassured that relationships, practices and the culture in the Home Office are much improved. As the arbiter of the code, having considered Sir Alex's advice and weighed up all the factors, the Prime Minister's judgment is that the ministerial code was not breached. Now, that's different to what you just heard Sir Alex say. He then goes on to conclude, the Prime Minister has full confidence in the Home Secretary and considers this matter now closed. He's grateful to thousands of civil servants working extremely hard to support delivery of the government's priorities. So those two key bits again, as the Prime Minister is arbiter of the code, having considered Sir Alex's advice, he has judged that the ministerial code has not been breached. That appears to contradict what we just heard from Alex Allen. He said that to that extent, her behaviour has been a breach of the ministerial code. It's as clear as light and day. Alex Allen is saying she broke the code. Boris Johnson is saying, taking everything into account, I'm not so sure, I don't think she did. There are reports now that Alex Allen is considering his future. We'll check those out and get back to you. But a serious moment for Boris Johnson, as effectively he overrules the most senior ethics advisor in his government.
Also interesting, isn't it? Because by saying she hasn't broken the ministerial code, he's actually leaving in place the possibility that if she had broken the ministerial code, she should have had to resign. That's the way he's got her off the charge, if you like.
It is up to a point, Adam, but Alex Allen in black and white has said that she broke the code, and we understand that Alex Allen has resigned as the advisor in the Cabinet Office, the most senior person in charge of propriety and ethics for Boris Johnson. Another complication in this row for the Prime Minister. Yes, the Prime Minister says there are lots of mitigating factors. Yes, the Prime Minister says that the Home Office hadn't supported her. The Prime Minister weighs heavily on the fact that Priti Patel didn't know she was bullying people because she wasn't told she was bullying people by the people, presumably some of whom she was bullying. And those are the grounds under which Boris Johnson decides that she hasn't broken the ministerial code. But ultimately, the Prime Minister will always remain the arbiter of the ministerial code and has decided that Priti Patel neither broke the code nor should go from her job. Priti Patel, we understand, has apologised, and we are waiting for that statement imminently. So apparently Alex Allen resigned because the PM ignored his advice, according to...
she says, I am sorry that my behaviour in the past has upset people. It has never been my intention to cause upset to anyone. I am very grateful for the hard work of thousands of civil servants who helped to deliver the government's agenda. I care deeply about delivering on the commitments we have made to the people of this country, and I acknowledge that I am direct and have at times got frustrated. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for his support. The Permanent Secretary and I are working closely together to deliver on the vital job the Home Office has to do for the country. And that's interesting, Sam, because the normal formula of these apologies is to say, I am sorry if my behaviour, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, she accepts it. She says, I am sorry, my behaviour has upset people. So she's not trying to deny it.
Absolutely. There are more than one extraordinary feature of this breaking story. We have just seen on the government website the resignation statement of the ethics advisor to the Prime Minister. Let me read it to you now. This page contains a statement from Sir Alex Allen, who wrote the report that found that Priti Patel did break the ministerial code. He says, "I recognise that it is for the Prime Minister to make a judgment on whether actions by a minister amount to a breach of the ministerial code. But I feel that it is right that I should now resign from my position as the Prime Minister's independent advisor on the code." Now, that means that he is going from his role as ethics advisor. We believe he's gone more widely from his position, but we'll be checking that out over the next half an hour. Clearly, the Prime Minister setting himself at odds with the civil service today. The civil service verdict was there was a breach of the ministerial code because of bullying. The Prime Minister decided that there were sufficient mitigating factors to keep her in her job. She has issued an apology for past behaviour, as you say, slightly circumscribed, slightly limited in what it's actually replying for. And what we don't have, of course, is perhaps a more detailed report from Alex Allen going through specific incidents that he looked into. Not clear whether that exists as a standalone document that might be published in future through freedom of information or perhaps through emerging through leaking that goes into what Alex Allen actually found in the specific. But today we have a situation where Boris Johnson says that Priti Patel can stay in her job after she was found to have breached the code by his advisors, but he decided that they were wrong.
I mean, this is an extraordinary situation, Sam, because my understanding of the ministerial code has always been that it was left to senior civil servants, the Cabinet Secretary and those he deputes, to take the decision on the technicalities, what the ministerial code was and whether ministers had breached it, and precisely to maintain the independence of the whole system. But now we have the Prime Minister saying, well, I don't care what, if you like, the official judges have decided, I'm overruling them.
You're right, Adam, although, to be honest, there's always an amount of cynicism that you have to apply to the entire independent ministerial code process. It exists as a convenience for the Prime Minister. Sometimes Prime Ministers want to forgive and keep their cabinet ministers in post and be able to say that an independent process has found that process has let the individual minister off the hook, and then the Prime Minister can simply go along with it. Sometimes the Prime Minister can say, well, I didn't do the investigation, an independent process did, and that's why I'm having to fire you. But that element of distance, always questionable in these situations, has never resulted in a public dispute between between one individual, the head of the sort of advice, deciding that the minister broke the code and the Prime Minister deciding that they didn't break the code, even if the minister themselves is put in the position even if then he decides not to sack the minister concerned. This is tricky for Boris Johnson. We are now at the end of reset week, where we were told after the departure of Dominic Cummings and some of his vote leave crew that we were going to get something of a different tone from the Prime Minister. What this does, this incident, is that it will ratchet up tensions between Whitehall and the Prime Minister because of the stark nature of the difference of opinion over what happened in the past and what should happen going forward. Boris Johnson, again, spending more political capital, rather like he did with Dominic Cummings earlier in the year, having to wade in and defend a cabinet minister or somebody who is close to, who is in trouble, clearly is in trouble because the independent ethics advisor investigated her conduct and found that it was, and decided that he was going to spend more of that political capital in defending her. Now, on helping him is the fact that this is turning in, quite frankly, to a partisan fight with Tories from the moderate wing of the Conservative Party, even including Tom Tugendhat, the moderate chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, sort of weighing in on Priti Patel's behalf. You heard Bernard Jenkin, the chair of the of a senior select committee, also saying that clearly the verdict on her behaviour was more nuanced and therefore she shouldn't go. So there's strong backing, and he's able able to point at Labour and say they're the people, basically make this into a sort of party political divide of an issue. Only one lone voice, Sir Roger Gale, even querying any of the aspects of what's going on today from the Tory benches. But nevertheless, the decision of Boris Johnson to hang on to Priti Patel, even after an independent investigation found that she breached the ministerial code, she's undoubtedly a very popular figure amongst the Tory grassroots. She's a hardline Home Secretary who got rousing cheers at her first party conference just over a year ago. She's a difficult figure to sack. But Boris Johnson himself was the Prime Minister who put her forward on the ministerial code saying, you break these rules, you're out. She was found to have broken the rules. Boris Johnson has had to overrule that, change that verdict in order to keep her in post.